Good morning, guys. How have you been? I hope all of you are doing well. It's raining here. I hope the noises of the rain does not disrupt the audio as such. So, in the last class, we had a discussion on Rolland Barthes' structuralist activity, and I sketched out the major points of it. It's actually a slightly lengthy essay, which might be slightly difficult to comprehend, but I have always enjoyed reading critical essays because it's like untangling a very complex knot. You must have gone in buses, and when you want to listen to your music, eventually you take out your earphones and they'll be like so tangled and messy, and eventually when you untie that knot and you are able to use the earphone, there is a kind of satisfaction and pleasure that you get, right? That's the same kind of pleasure that I get when I read critical essays or theoretical essays, because eventually when out of these intricate complex ideas you are able to understand a concept precisely, there is an amazing sense of gratification that it gives. So we discussed the major points of the essay in the last class. Today I'm not going to delve into that. Today I'm going to give you my own personal reflections on the essay so that you can understand it slightly better. So I have read the essay and I have really enjoyed reading the essay because it's actually beautiful to understand certain concepts, understand certain perspectives that important writers and theoreticians have put forward. Now I'll delve quickly into the essay. So Rolland Barthes initially starts from the confusion whether structuralism actually is a movement or a school, because there are no general rules by which people can be identified as structuralists or non-structuralists. So Rolland Barthes actually is creating a figure called the structuralist man. So he is saying that structuralism is essentially an activity. If somebody involves himself in that activity, he can be called a structuralist man. So what actually is this activity of structuralism? So he actually gives it a very slightly complex definition, which I'll try to simplify in my own terms. That is, imagine that I am a structuralist man, I am a structuralist thinker. So when I encounter an object can be anything, a literary text, an image that I see, a cultural event that is happening around me. So when a structuralist man encounters an object, what will he do? He'll actually initially decompose the object, that is, he'll dissect the object, and then he will recompose the object. So decompose and recompose the object. So why actually do this? Because it's only when you question certain basic functions of an object that it attains certain levels of meaning. It attains deeper kind of meaning. So imagine that I encounter a text. So I will dissect it first. That is, I will identify the individual elements of the text that constitutes the meaning of that text or an object. So this process is called dissection. So what are the constituting elements of this text? What elements actually make the meaning or understanding of this text possible? And then I will articulate it. That is, there must be some connection between these elements of the object that actually make the meaning possible. There are elements, there are certain norms or certain patterns of connection between these elements that actually make the meaning possible. So in the first part, I dissect the object in order to understand the constituting elements, and then I identify the patterns that actually associate these elements or relate these elements and make meaning possible. So this process, the second process of finding associations of meanings, is called articulation. So structuralism is not a very passive activity. So structuralism actually involves a lot of agency from the part of the structuralist man or whoever is encountering that object. It's not like the object is radiating some kind of meaning which I just go and identify, but rather structuralism is not man finding inherent meaning from an object according to Barthes, but rather man is actually fabricating a meaning through his intellect. So we are all intellectual beings that we think in order to understand things. So in a structuralist activity, the structuralist man actually identifies or observes a certain kind of an object, and then he applies his intellect in order to make different meanings possible out of that object. So this is called simulacrum by Barthes. That is, intellect applied to the object. Human intellect applied to the object is called simulacrum by the critic Rolland Barthes. So if I see a literary text, there are many constituting elements in it. Words are there are certain grammatical forms, sentence structures, and pauses, and so these are the constituting elements. So if I identify, I am dissecting the text, and if I am finding some association with these elements and some reason for the association with these elements, then I am articulating some pattern. So that becomes the articulation process. So I am applying my intellect, my understanding capability to that object, which is the literary text, so that I am creating a simulacrum there. So in the structuralist activity, we are actually recreating the object using the intellect. So Barthes is very, adamant about the idea that human intellect actually creates a sense of reality that is around us. It's not like there is a hard and fast reality which we go and unravel, but rather human intellect and human understanding of the world is actually applied to whatever objects are around, and then we create meanings. So this is the structuralist activity. We go around and when we encounter objects, we use our intellect in order to recreate them. This recreated version of the object is called the simulacrum, and the processes are that of dissection and articulation, and this is probably the crux of the thought. And in this process, many elements can be involved. Imagine that I have a really good notion about history. So when I see an object, how might I recreate the object? When I use my intellect to understand the object, to make sense of that object, I might use my historical understanding. Now, when I see probably a building, and I try to make sense of that building, I might have some notions about archaeology or the ancient architecture, which I might apply to that object. So my intellect works in that way. So any kind of disciplines might be employed in making sense of that object. So human agency is very significant in making sense of things or objects. That can be called to be the major crux of the argument there. And also you think about the text like The Death of the Author by Rolland Barthes himself. So when the author once creates a text, the author is dead, Rolland Barthes says. That is, it becomes an object which can actually be understood with the intellect of the reader. So when the reader approaches this text, there is no significance to the author's like history or his personal ideas, what he intended as a meaning as such, but rather it's the intellect of the reader which determines the meaning that he takes from it. So the structuralist activity actually problematizes or questions the process of this meaning production. That is, what functions in these texts make this meaning production possible? What functions of the elements or what functions of the associations make this kind of a meaning possible? That's the central question pursued by the structuralist. So the basic idea of the structuralist is to understand the functions which actually make the meaning production of an object possible. So what patterns or what norms or what cause and effect actually makes the meaning production of this object possible? That's the major idea that is the focus of the structuralist activity according to Barthes. Now, the text Death of the Author is also a very significant text. It actually marks the transition from the post-structuralist thought of frame of mind of Barthes, from the structuralist frame of mind of Barthes to the post-structuralist frame of mind. So if you have time, read that. If you don't have time, at least go through a brief summary of that essay also, and read this essay specifically. It will be very fun. Just read it eventually to understand something. It will be very gratifying and pleasurable an experience. Okay, so I'll wind up for the time being. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys are keeping safe. There are many things happening around in the college. The new admissions have started, and we are actually inducing them into the college through online platforms. I hope some of you may have seen those. And a lot of online activities are being planned. At times it can be a bit hectic to you also due to the screen time and due to the technical issues like connectivity issues. We understand all that, and I personally am very appreciative of all of you guys, because it's very different from real life classes, and it's not easy also when you have to stare into a screen for a really long time and you have to use audio devices for a really long time. It's not easy connecting or finding some personal connection to what is being taught, but you have been doing wonderfully well. And I'm very thankful to you guys for that. Thank you for being very cooperative and for having the patience to bear with us while we struggle to create content in the online world during the pandemic times. Thank you and all the best. I'll see you in the next class.